Hey team, it's Conrad Tracy, Addiction Coaching Australia. The top 5 questions I get asked as an addiction coach from busy professionals who are ready to make change. Now, the top one is this: how will I regulate my emotions without drugs and alcohol? Now, the first thing I'll say is this, is you'll absolutely do it better, but it has to come after a period of uncomfortability, right? And being able to deal with your emotions without the blanket, without the tool that you use to numb them, is the real work. It can be really hard, but it's super critical that you have the support and guidance to get you through that period, because that's where people typically break down. They stop drinking, they stop taking drugs, they try to deal with relationships, finance, parenting, and they can't. They don't have the tools, so they break down, they relapse, and then they go around and around in that cycle, and it can be really, really hard on their confidence and self-efficacy. So the most important thing to understand is that we give you the tools, we give you the support. And then deeper than this, we're really going to help you to reset your internal biochemistry. So whilst you've stopped, whilst you're getting the support, we're doing the internal work to make sure that your delta phos B levels, your dopamine thresholds are coming down in a manageable and safe way. So you've stopped drinking, you stop taking drugs, you're showing up in the solution, your biochemistry is resetting, and all of those three things are happening concurrently, okay? And that's what people miss. They just try and white knuckle it and stop, and they don't do any of the internal work, and they don't have the support and guidance they need to make change. Now, being able to regulate your emotions, it also creates new neural pathways, and we'll work with you every single day. We've got a tool called The Play that helps you to practice gratitude and acceptance and self-reporting and self-reflection to create new neural pathways every day, and also to calm your nervous system. Now, this is one of the big ones. So through breath, through meditation, through daily reflection, your nervous system will calm down. So the outcome of this, you can clearly communicate. You can master your perspective. So you wake up every day feeling positive about the world, and you really become a master of your environments and your situations. So you don't let things trigger you. Now, what it looks like is when you begin to balance your emotions, you're confident, you're patient, you approach things with understanding, and you are much easier to be around. Now, the client that comes to mind when I think of this was a person called. Now, when I met her, she was crippled with anxiety. She used to wake up in the morning and dry reach from the drinking. She was completely isolated. She couldn't communicate her thoughts and feelings with her family or with her husband, and she spent most of her time in her internal world. Now, we removed the alcohol. We helped her to calm her nervous system. We helped her to reset her dopamine thresholds and start to show up in the solution and in life. And in today, she's got amazing relationships with her family, her husband, and more importantly, herself. All right, guys, straight on to number 2. And this is a funny question. It's what if I am the problem? So what if I'm the actual problem? Now, I'm going to be really blunt, and I'm going to say most of the time, if you are drinking too much and you're taking drugs, you're absolutely going to be the problem. Okay. So what we do is we foster an environment of candid accountability to help you show up and identify the patterns and behaviors. Okay. So we stop drinking, we stop taking drugs, we take a really good hard look at ourselves, we start to show up, and we identify the patterns and behaviors that are not serving us. And we give you a place to proactively come and improve and practice these with people that don't judge you and who are going through the same thing. So it permeates into your life. You come into our framework, you show up 3 times a week, you practice vulnerability, communication, you see how your old behaviors start to change and amalgamate, and then you go out into your life, into work and relationships, and it starts to permeate out. Now, the best place to start is with you, right? If there's other people in the mix, that's fine, but we start with your behavior. We give you a really good tune up. It's not a full rebuild, it's just a tune. And then we send you out into the world to reintegrate with your relationships. Okay. So we really help you to keep your side of the street clean. And we'll also do deep work on helping you to identify the root cause. We've got a system which we call the identity integration model. And what this will help you to do is figure out your optimal and suboptimal behaviors. It will help you to go and do the deep work on subconscious integration through the mirror method And we also take an internal family systems approach to go in and identify the parts of you that need a little bit of love and care and refinement to help you to build a holistic and integrated version of yourself. Once this is done, you really start to show up for yourself, your friends, and your family. And I can't help but think of an amazing guy I worked with in the Delta Park called incredibly successful, beautiful human being. And he came to me and he was an absolute shipwreck. He had everything in life, a successful business, a beautiful family, more money than he'd ever need. But his behavior was absolutely out of control. And he knew that. He was out of integrity. He was out of focus. He was out of alignment with his values. And that doesn't make him a bad person. We just went in, we identified it all, we did all of the work, and we gave him constant and daily feedback on the things that he needed to improve so he could go and roll this out and reintegrate with his family and show up as the best version of himself. All right, guys, straight into question number 3. Have I been avoiding the state of my relationships? And I can say this unequivocally, yes, you have. 95% of the people that I work with in programs like the Circuit Breaker and the Delta Park, the issue with them is their relationship, okay? And once we remove the drugs and alcohol, we can work on the relationship with yourself and the relationship with your partner. Now, I'm really passionate about helping people to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what I mean by this is that often when people go through periods of drug use and alcohol use, whether they're short or prolonged, the relationship becomes too stressful and everybody just wants to quit, okay? What I like to do is, again, help people to manage their emotions, show up for themselves, reintegrate with value and integrity, and keep their side of the street clean so we can work on the actual relationship using a clean slate. One of the most central parts of the work in relationship is really helping people to stop lying and start showing up, and also to stop hiding, okay? So we stop lying, we come out of isolation, and we start to practice things like clear communication, boundaries. We reconnect and rebuild your relationship using tools like wins and roadblocks and relationship gardening. So the important thing to remember here is that it starts with you. 90% of the people that I end up working with manage to not only repair their relationships, but rebuild them into things that are happy, healthy, connected, and really vibrant. And the people that don't, they face the truth and they make a hard decision about their future and their relationship with support and without having to lean into drugs and alcohol. Now, the person that comes to mind when I think about relationships is an amazing guy I worked with again in the Delta Park called. When I met him, his wife had taken her rings off. He'd taken their rings off. They were completely disconnected. They had no sense of connection. They had no ability to communicate, and their marriage was absolutely headed towards the rocks. I worked with him for a period of 12 months, and we practiced clear communication. We practiced boundaries. We practiced self-reflection, and helped him to balance his emotions and show up as the best version of himself for his friends, his family, and his kids. And today the rings are back on. They're together. They're actually touring around the world, having a great time. And it's not perfect, but it's 95% better than it was when he started. All right, team, let's jump into question number 4. What if I stop and I realize that I don't like the life or the person that I've built or become? Now, this happens, but it doesn't happen often. And what I want to share with you today is that we'll really help you to treat it like an exploration and help you to return to your path. So if you've come off your path, there's no need to feel guilt. There's no need to feel shame. There's no need to feel remorse. And there's no need to sit in that and beat yourself up. Okay, you show up in the solution, you come into the framework, and what we'll do is we will sit down and we'll treat it like an exploration. Isn't it interesting that that happened? Why did that happen? We look at the behavior, we take accountability, we make not amends, but we mend fences and we rebuild relationships, and then we return to the path with integrity and values. And if change is required, then this is the best place to do it. We come in and we get honest about what we've done and who we've become, and we do the deep work to reintegrate and reconnect with purpose and clarity. One of the things that I see, which is more apparent than people wanting to rebuild their whole life, is actually a return to things. So often I'll work with people and they will realize that they've lost creativity in their life, or they've lost joy in their life, or they've lost fun. Okay. And removing the drugs and alcohol, which is what we do to create this little private Idaho, we've got more space and time to actually go and reconnect to the things that we truly enjoy. So often it is not a complete rebuild, it is a tune-up, and you've just taken a small divergence off your path. And unfortunately, when you do that, you meet a lot of people who have taken the same divergence. So coming back onto the path, removing those people from your life, reconnecting to your family, your true friends, and getting back to the core of what makes you happy, the core of what lights you up, and what brings you absolute joy in life is one of the deepest and most fulfilling parts of this work. So don't be scared that you're going to do this and realize that you don't like yourself or you don't like what you've built. Because most of the time, you'll end up feeling more connected to it, more joy, but you'll just have to make some quick refinements and some quick changes to make sure it is the most optimal version of the life that you want to live. So guys, we've hit our last question, which is, how am I supposed to fit this into my already busy schedule? Now, I'll tell you this, your life feels overwhelmed and overloaded and filled with anxiety because of drugs and alcohol. It's not because you're too busy. I can guarantee you that. Our programs, they're built for elite professionals, and I have worked with some of the busiest people in the world. Okay. And this is not to pump up my own tires, but it's to give you a gauge of what we're really talking about. People that are flying from Australia to London to Sydney to Hong Kong and back in a single week, right? They are at the top of their fields across multiple industries, and they are still managing to do this work. So they come into programs like the Delta Path, a 12-week intensive. They'll do that, and they'll do it with absolute priority, and they manage it even with the busiest of schedules. So if you are an electrician, if you are a teacher, if you are a creative, if you are working in a C-level role, if you are working on the mines, FIFO, in and out, this program is designed for you. Regular touch points that are easy to tackle and feel absolutely manageable inside your life. Now, this is the greatest bit. One of my clients came to me the other day and he said, Conrad, I didn't realize the tax that I've been paying. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I've got 30 or 40% more capacity, right? And I want to tell you this story because when I met, he was, again, at the top of his field, traveling in and out of Australia, working at a world-class level in his profession. And he almost didn't do this work because he's like, I can't get the clearance. I can't find 12 weeks where I'm not completely busy. And I just want to be able to give it my complete attention. And what I knew that was a subconscious pull from him to not do the work, right? I gave him a gentle nudge and we had a very honest conversation. And in the time that he's been with me, he's again been out of Australia 3 or 4 times, touring, working at a world-class level. And he stopped drinking and his capacity increased by 30 or 40%. Now, when you get that increase in capacity, you can use that for this program. You can use that for your kids. You can use that for your family, and you can use it for yourself. So if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel anxious and you feel like there's not a single thing that you could add to your life, I guarantee you that if you stop drinking and you stop taking drugs, your capacity will increase by 30 or 40%, and you'll feel like you've got headroom, okay? So one of the greatest gifts that I get to see is watch people's battery charge and see them hit life with energy, momentum, and absolute clarity for themselves and their families. So guys, that brings us to the end of our top 5 questions, and I hope that this has been interesting for you. You may have thought about this. This may be what's on your mind, and I want you to know that there is deep knowledge here. There's deep understanding, and there's an incredible group of people who are going through exactly the same thing. So if you're asking yourself these questions, I guarantee you are just about to walk through the door of change. And what I'd like to do is invite you to actually take that step, book in a consult, spend 20, 30, 40 minutes with me. We'll have a deep conversation about what's going on for you, what's happening in your life, and whether working with me in the circuit breaker or the Delta Path is the right fit for you. And if it's not, I will 100% point you in the right direction. I hope that this has been useful, informative, and please like, subscribe, and follow my channel, The Addiction Coach. See ya.